And
we're
back.
I couldn't get to Jody.
Bummer.
Her internet. She said her internet keeps going in and out. So I have a couple more questions that I'm going to ask.
All right.
And then we're done. Okay. Now, is there an expiration date for breast milk if you pump it and then put it directly into the freezer?
Yeah.
Is there an expiration?
Yeah. So it kind of depends on what type of freezer we're talking about. So, and when we say expiration date, the thing about milk in the freezer is that it's not so much that it's going to completely spoil, although it will after a long period of time. It's also that after a while, a period of months in the freezer, the nutrition in the milk is going to start to degrade. So the fat and the protein and the vitamin content is just not going to be as great as, you know, when we first as when mom first pumped that milk. So
Okay.
if we're talking about like the freezer compartment of a regular refrigerator, milk is generally good in a freezer like that for about like 5-ish months or so. And it's really good to put that milk all the way in the back of the freezer. So don't put it in the door where the door is like constantly opening and closing and the milk is going to be like coming up to temperature. Stick it more in the back. And if you're building up a stash of milk that's in that freezer, keep an eye on it. It's good to maybe like think about having one of those little portable thermometers in the freezer, just so you can know that everything is always frozen in there. If you have a chest or a standalone freezer, the milk in there can stay good a lot longer. And I'm just double checking here. That's like up to a year, so like 6 to 12 months. So
Wow.
I don't have that kind of space in my house for a standalone chest freezer, but some people do. And some moms, you know, they pump a lot of milk and they want to save that for their baby. So some people will invest in a chest freezer or something like that to store and organize their milk. And you know, there's not as much temperature fluctuation with something like that, so the milk will last longer in there.
Okay. Good. Now, my first, I think you may have touched on this earlier.
Okay.
But is it to breastfeed the baby continuously throughout the first several weeks of life instead of introducing the bottle in between, or can the bottle? I know some dads want to feed the baby and bond with the baby too.
Yeah.
So which one is best, to strictly breastfeed or to pump and, you know, let dad, you know, do it? How does, which one?
Yeah, this is such a big question, and I think that a lot of families really struggle with this. And so ideally, it's great to wait to introduce a bottle, a passy, or any other type of nipple until after breastfeeding is pretty well established. So, and for most moms, that's going to take about a month or so for mom and baby to really just kind of get into a good rhythm. And I always, you know, I tell people that the way that babies and moms learn to breastfeed is by breastfeeding. And the more we introduce a bottle, a passy, something like that, then you're taking out opportunities for mom and baby to learn how to do this brand new thing that the two of them have never done before. So even if we're talking about like a super experienced mama, she's never breastfed that baby before. And so every mom and baby is different, and they need time to really, you know, nurture that breastfeeding relationship and get off to a good start. So, you know, if there's a reason that you know, introducing a bottle or something like that is needed, if you can wait a few weeks, even like 2 or 3 weeks, to give the baby and mom a chance to learn how to do the breastfeeding thing, that's awesome. But you know, sometimes people talk about like nipple confusion and things like that, and sometimes that can be a concern. We can have babies that they start to prefer that passy or bottle nipple as opposed to the breast, but often it's honestly more an issue of what we call flow preference with the baby and not as much as nipple preference. So it's a lot easier generally for the baby to get milk from a bottle than it is from breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, the baby just has to coordinate more, and the baby really has to actively nurse to draw that milk out. And so there are some things that mom or dad or granny or nanny, whoever is might be bottle feeding that baby can do, whether it's a newborn baby or an older baby, to really protect the breastfeeding relationship that mom and baby have. And so I can link to this as well. There's some practices called paced bottle feeding. And this is really awesome because basically what we want to do is we want to make bottle feeding very similar to breastfeeding. So we don't want to let that baby like gulp, 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 gulp that bottle down in just like a minute or two. We want taking that bottle to take, about like 10 or 15 minutes per,
Okay.
per ounces, the same way it would if baby were nursing. And you can do that by kind of, instead of holding the bottle up like this and letting the baby go, 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 hold the bottle more like horizontal with the baby's mouth so that the milk is not pooling in, and making sure that we're using either like a real slow flow, like stage 1 or even preemie for tiny, tiny babies nipple. That way, when you hold that bottle upside down, we really only should see like very slow with the milk coming out, because that's more, the rate at which milk comes out of the breast. And if we teach the baby, that breastfeeding, that taking the bottle is a process, and that they're gonna take that bottle over the course of a little while, and we teach them to be patient with the bottle, then baby will not get used to the milk like pooling out, rushing out of that bottle. And then when the baby goes back to breastfeed, it will be easier for them to switch back and forth. The more we can make the bottle feeding similar to the breastfeeding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I always tell my moms when they do the bottle feed that there are different size nipples,
Yeah.
that they're numbered, and it depends on the age of the child as to what number and how fast that milk flow needs to come out of that bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is clicking to my brain. I'm like, okay, got it. It's making sense, because I'm like, I know there is a correlation between breastfeeding and the nipples and how this milk is flowing, but I never quite put those two together. You just kind of put that jigsaw puzzle together for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fast that milk comes. And that's a really great question about like all the different stages of the nipples and the 1, 2, 3 as the baby gets older. So let's go back and talk about the breastfeeding. So the rate at which the milk is coming out of mom's breast, that's pretty much going to be the same for the whole time mom is breastfeeding. Sometimes like her supply may fluctuate up and down, her letdown may fluctuate up and down a little bit, but as the baby gets older, it's not like we're gonna have like a waterfall of milk just like running out of the breast. It's gonna flow at pretty much the same rate. So honestly, there is no reason to change the nipple that you are using with an older baby. And that honestly is where a lot of moms that are still breastfeeding, a 3, 4, 6, 9, even 1+ year old baby can start to have challenges with bottle feeding. Is people will start using a nipple with a much higher stage and a nipple with the milk flowing much faster. And then that baby starts to think, oh man, this is awesome. This milk just like coming on right out of this bottle. But the breast milk is still flowing at the same rate, at that same, nice and slow and calm and steady rate that it's always been flowing at. So we don't want to move up the bottle nipples for the baby. We want to just use like a starter stage 1 nipple is fine for a little baby and an older baby. And
Okay.
they will, as long as we give them that bottle and we wait for that baby to show us, when they're hungry or they're full, that baby is going to get all the milk that they need.
Okay. So if a baby is on formula
Mm-hmm.
instead of breastfeeding,
Mm-hmm.
um, that nipple, the ones, twos, and threes,
Yeah.
as they get older, that does not apply
Well,
to the formula fed child.
yeah. Well, it's a little bit different. Is this baby on formula
Okay.
supplement and then at home they're going to be breastfeeding with mom? In that case, I would say stick with the slow flow nipple. But if that baby
Okay.
is solely formula fed, then that family may choose, for personal reasons to use a higher stage nipple. But all that, when baby is taking even a formula, if baby is like exclusively formula fed, if they are gulping that bottle down super fast and that formula is flowing super fast out of the bottle, that can also cause gassiness and tummy troubles for the baby. If you think about how you eat, and when we eat so quickly and you're guzzling down your drink or your smoothie or whatever, it's not real comfortable to eat that way. And so even for formula fed babies, I mean, if the family chooses to use a larger nipple, they can. And some babies will start to kind of protest a little bit with the milk going a little bit slower. But our babies can learn to be patient and to wait, and we can talk to them and we can sing to them, and we can engage them while they're taking the bottle the same way when mom is breastfeeding. She's talking to the baby, she's stroking the baby, and they're interacting. So we can do things to make that bottle feeding engaging for the baby to where they're still being patient with the milk flow. Does that
Okay.
yeah, with the bottle?
Yes, that's my question. I
Yeah.
that was all of my questions.
Okay.
Unless someone else has. Christina says, I've also recommended holding the baby in a different position than mom. Now I'm panicked. That's not a good idea, is it? Okay.
Is Christina, is she talking about bottle feeding, like holding?
I think she's talking about bottle feeding versus breastfeeding,
Yeah.
so the baby will not get used to.
I think that that's really just preference. Some babies like to be held when they're being bottle fed. If it's a breastfed baby and they're getting a bottle while mom is gone with the nanny or another caregiver, some babies like it to be very similar to breastfeeding. And they like to be, and if they're cradle held and breastfeeding, they like to be in a cradle hold when they're bottle fed. Or if mom always plays like a lullaby song, some babies like it to be similar, and other babies, they're like, this is not my mama. This is not my booby. You have to feed me. And so, some babies may like it to be different. They may want to sit up more, and they may want you to, walk around, or, so every baby is going to be different. And so, you nannies, y'all know what the baby's like. And I think we all have to experiment, and, dad
Yeah.
find his role, mom has to find her role, nanny has to find her role, and the baby may prefer different habits with different caregivers. The babies are smart and they know.
Well, I don't cradle the baby.